Hello everyone, welcome to Omastruestories. Let's quickly jump on this one. See you soon at the end of it. Children's laughter echoed through the fields, women pounded yam in synchronized rhythm, and the men gathered under the ancient Iroko tree, discussing the day's hunt. Among the vibrant scene, two young women stood out like flowers in a meadow. Enes and Nnes were inseparable, their bond a source of admiration for the villagers. Their laughter carried through the air, a melody of youthful joy that seemed unbreakable. Enes, with her rich, dark complexion, exuded an effortless beauty that turned heads wherever she went. Nnes, on the other hand, with her radiant light skin and delicate features, seemed to glow under the sun's embrace. Together, they were a striking pair, their friendship as vibrant as the colors of their traditional wrappers. They shared everything: stories, secrets, and dreams of a future filled with love and happiness. On this particular day, the two friends strolled to the village stream, their woven baskets swinging gently at their sides. The water sparkled under the sunlight, reflecting their carefree smiles. They spoke of nothing and everything, their voices blending with the chirping of birds and the rustling of leaves. Yet, as they laughed and teased one another, the gentle breeze carried whispers of change, something neither of them could yet foresee. At the stream, they met a group of young women washing clothes and exchanging gossip. The talk of the village was the arrival of a mysterious stranger, Ugochukwu. Enes and Nnes exchanged curious glances, their interest piqued by the tales of his strength and charm. They say he's not just handsome but has the kind of presence that makes everyone stop and stare, one of the women said, her tone laced with admiration. Enes shrugged, her laughter dismissive. Men are all the same. Strong, handsome, and full of promises they never keep. Nnes chuckled but said nothing, her gaze lingering on the path that led back to the village. Neither girl could have imagined that this stranger, whose name was now on every lip, would soon alter the course of their lives forever. Nnes' beauty began to draw more admiration from the villagers. Her light skin and delicate features seemed to radiate under the sun, catching the eyes of young men and earning her praise from older women. She carried herself with grace, her laughter a melody that seemed to enchant anyone within earshot. While Enes had always been the more confident and commanding presence, she couldn't help but notice the growing attention Nnes was receiving. The shift in the village's admiration unsettled Enes. Though their bond had always been unshakable, jealousy began to creep into her heart. Her own beauty, dark and radiant, had once been the talk of the village. Now, it seemed that Nnes was stealing the spotlight. Worse still, Enes noticed how Ugochukwu, the mysterious new arrival, seemed to gravitate towards Nnes in subtle ways, an extra glance, a lingering smile. The tension between the two friends was still unspoken, simmering beneath the surface. Enes tried to dismiss her growing unease, telling herself that Nnes would never betray their friendship. Yet, her heart ached every time Ugochukwu's gaze lingered on Nnes. The once carefree conversations between the friends now carried an undercurrent of competition, though neither openly acknowledged it. One afternoon, as they returned from the stream, Enes overheard a group of young men talking about Nnes. "She's like the moonlight in a dark night," one of them said. The comment stung, not because it wasn't true, but because it highlighted Enes' own insecurities. She clenched her fist, her mind racing with questions she couldn't answer. Nnes, oblivious to the growing tension, continued to bask in the attention. She enjoyed Ugochukwu's subtle gestures, though she never voiced her feelings aloud. She couldn't help but wonder if he would be the one to finally win her heart. The air between the two friends grew heavy, and the once harmonious bond they shared began to strain under the weight of unspoken rivalry. The tension between Enes and Nnes could no longer be ignored. What once was an unbreakable bond of friendship had become a delicate thread, strained under the weight of unspoken jealousy. Enes' smiles felt forced, and Nnes, though oblivious to the true depth of her friend's feelings, noticed the growing distance between them. Ugochukwu, the mysterious stranger, seemed to deepen the rift with his every move. His charisma and subtle charm drew Nene closer, while Esin found herself feeling increasingly excluded. To Esin, it seemed that fate itself was conspiring against her, handing Nene every opportunity to shine in the stranger's eyes. One fateful evening, the three of them found themselves at the village square during a moonlit celebration. Villagers danced and sang around a blazing fire, their faces illuminated by the flickering light. Ugochukwu's eyes lingered on Nene as he spoke softly to her, his voice barely audible over the music. Esin watched from a distance, her heart heavy with bitterness and pain. Unable to contain herself, Esin approached them, her words sharp and cutting. Is this how friends behave? Or have we already forgotten what loyalty means? The crowd fell silent, their attention turning toward the confrontation. Nene's expression shifted from confusion to hurt, while Ugochukwu stood stoically, as though unaffected by the brewing storm. The night ended with Nene retreating in tears and Esin left standing alone, her heart aching with the weight of anger and regret. The whispers of the villagers grew louder, as the once-admired friendship between the two girls crumbled before their eyes. In the shadows, Ugochukwu remained, his enigmatic smile hinting at secrets yet to be revealed. Whispers began to circulate throughout the village, fueled by the dramatic confrontation at the bonfire. The villagers, intrigued by Ugochukwu's stoic demeanor and mysterious background, couldn't help but question where he had come from. Some claimed he was a wandering hunter, others whispered of darker origins, suggesting he might not be entirely of this world. The elder of the village, an aged man known for his wisdom and insight, called a meeting under the ancient Iroko tree. This stranger among us, he began, his voice grave, carries a presence that unsettles the spirits of our ancestors. Have any of you seen his family or his home? The crowd fell silent, their curiosity mingling with unease. Despite the elder's warning, Ugochukwu's charm continued to draw people toward him. Nene, still shaken from her argument with Esin, found solace in his calm presence. His words, though few, seemed to soothe her wounded heart. But Esin, watching from afar, felt an inexplicable chill every time she saw him. One evening, as the moon cast its silvery glow over the village, Esin approached the elder in secret. "What do you know of him?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The elder looked at her intently and said, "Child, not all that walks among us is meant to stay. Watch him closely, and you will see." The village began to notice strange occurrences, crops withering without cause, animals falling sick, and the sudden silence of birds at dusk. Whispers grew louder, and unease spread like wildfire. Ugochukwu, however, remained unbothered, his enigmatic smile only deepening the villagers' suspicion. The tension in the village reached its peak during the annual Yam festival. Villagers dressed in their finest traditional attire gathered in the square, their faces painted with a mix of joy and apprehension. The drumming and singing were lively, but the underlying unease was palpable. Ugochukwu arrived, his presence commanding, drawing admiring glances and suspicious whispers in equal measure. As the festivities unfolded, Esin could no longer contain her growing frustration. She watched as Ugochukwu once again gravitated toward Nene, his charm seemingly reserved for her alone. The bitterness that had been brewing within her boiled over, and she stormed across the square, her voice cutting through the music and chatter. The villagers turned as Esin confronted Nene and Ugochukwu in the middle of the square. "How can you trust someone we know nothing about?" Esin demanded, her voice trembling with anger and pain. Nene, caught off guard, tried to respond, but her words were drowned out by Esin's sharp accusations. Ugochukwu, as always, remained calm, his enigmatic smile never wavering. The festival came to an abrupt halt as villagers gathered around the trio, their curiosity and unease reaching a fever pitch. The elder stepped forward, his staff striking the ground with authority. "Enough," he declared, his voice silencing the crowd. "This is not the time nor the place for such quarrels. We will seek the truth about this man soon enough. The crowd dispersed reluctantly, leaving Esin, Nena, and Ugochukwu standing in the square under the flickering torchlight. Nena turned away, tears streaming down her face, while Esin remained rooted, her fist clenched and her heart heavy. Ugochukwu walked away into the shadows, his figure blending into the night, leaving behind an air of mystery that hung over the village like a storm cloud. The morning air was still as the villagers gathered under the ancient Iroko tree. The elder's staff struck the ground sharply, commanding silence. His eyes, sharp with suspicion, turned to Ugochukwu. "You have brought unease to our village. Tell us who you are and why you are here." Ugochukwu stepped forward, his calm demeanor unwavering. "I am a traveler from a faraway land," he began, his voice deep and steady. "I have come to find peace and build a home. But most importantly, I seek the hand of Esin and Nena in marriage, for they have captured my heart." His words hung in the air, and murmurs rippled through the crowd. The elder raised an eyebrow, his tone skeptical. "Do you think we will simply hand over our daughters to a stranger? What do you have to offer their families?" Ugochukwu smiled confidently. "I have everything their parents could ask for: wealth, gifts, and the promise of a good life for their daughters." The elder turned to Esin and Nena, who stood side by side, their faces a mix of surprise and nervous excitement. "You have heard his words," the elder said, his voice grave. "Do you accept his proposal?" The square fell silent as the two women exchanged glances. Then, with hesitant but clear voices, they each said yes. A collective gasp swept through the crowd as the elder nodded solemnly. "So be it," he declared, though his eyes lingered on Ugochukwu, filled with doubt and unease. The air was alive with joy as Ugochukwu completed the marriage rites for both Esin and Nena. Drummers played lively rhythms, and women ululated in celebration. The villagers danced and sang, their faces alight with happiness for the two brides. Esin and Nena, dressed in their finest traditional attire, stood beside Ugochukwu, their expressions a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. The celebrations lasted for days, with gifts exchanged and prayers offered for the couple's happiness. Ugochukwu's promises of wealth and a bright future had won over even the most skeptical elders, and the villagers embraced the unions with open hearts. On the day of departure, the entire village gathered at dawn. Esin and Nena carefully packed their belongings, woven baskets filled with clothes, ornaments, and gifts from their families. Ugochukwu stood by, his calm demeanor steadying the flurry of emotions around him. As the group began their journey, villagers accompanied them to the outskirts of the village. The path was lined with well-wishers, their blessings echoing in the air. The elders poured libations, asking the ancestors to guide and protect the trio on their journey. At the final point of farewell, the villagers stopped. "We leave you here," the elder announced solemnly. "Go well and honor your families." Esin and Nena turned to wave goodbye as Ugochukwu led them down the winding path, his enigmatic smile unchanged. The villagers stood watching until the trio disappeared into the distance, leaving behind a silence heavy with hope and uncertainty. As the journey through the forest stretched on, Esin and Nena began to tire. Their once vibrant steps slowed, and they pleaded with Ugochukwu to stop for a rest. He obliged, sitting quietly as the two brides leaned against a tree, their breathing heavy with exhaustion. The chirping of crickets filled the silence as the sun began to dip behind the trees. When they resumed, the path became darker and more treacherous. Night fell, and the group stopped again, this time lying down on the road to sleep. The girls whispered among themselves, their unease growing. "How far is this man's village?" Nena murmured, her voice laced with suspicion. Ugochukwu offered no response, his silence only deepening their discomfort. By dawn, they reached a riverbank. The water sparkled in the early light, offering a brief moment of beauty amid their growing doubts. Ugochukwu stepped into the river, announcing that he would swim before continuing the journey. The girls watched from the shore, exchanging uneasy glances. When Ugochukwu emerged, their gasps echoed through the quiet forest. "Your leg," Ezen cried. "What happened to your other leg?" Nena added, her voice trembling. Standing before them, Ugochukwu now had only one leg, his balance unaffected as he calmly replied, "The owner has taken it back." The girls screamed and turned to run, but their legs felt heavy, as though the forest itself held them captive. Ugochukwu's calm demeanor remained unshaken as he gestured for them to follow. With no other choice, they continued the journey, fear gripping their hearts. At every stop, Ugochukwu's body continued to change. His arm disappeared at one point, his ear at another, and each time, he explained with eerie calm, "I am returning them to their owners." Ezen and Nena clung to each other, their terror growing with every step. By the time they reached a clearing, only one of Ugochukwu's eyes remained. The girls collapsed, their fear overtaking them. When they awoke, Ugochukwu stood over them, his figure almost transparent, his remaining eye glowing faintly. "I am a spirit," he said, his voice echoing as though it came from the wind itself. "I was sent to teach you a lesson for rejecting suitors and sowing enmity. Your arrogance brought me here." The girls sobbed, their pleas for mercy echoing through the forest. Ugochukwu tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "Your lives are spared," he finally said. "But remember this, the choices you make have consequences." With that, he disappeared into the shadows, leaving them trembling and alone. A month later, Ezen and Nena stumbled back into the village. Their clothes were torn, their faces pale, and their once bright eyes filled with horror. The villagers rushed to meet them, their voices filled with concern as they asked, "What happened?" The girls recounted their ordeal, describing Ugochukwu's true nature and the terror of their journey. Gasps and murmurs filled the air as the villagers listened in disbelief. Humbled and broken, Ezen and Nena finally accepted the suitors who had once pursued them. Ezen married an old man, his wrinkles telling a story of patience and wisdom. Nena married the ugliest man in the village, whose kind heart had been overlooked for too long. The weddings were simple, with none of the grandeur of their previous union. The villagers celebrated quietly, grateful that the lesson had not cost their lives. And so, the story of Ezen, Nena, and the mysterious Ugochukwu became a cautionary tale, passed down through generations. It was a reminder of the dangers of pride and the unseen consequences of the choices we make. Moral of this short story. Pride and arrogance lead to downfall. Ezen and Nena's belief that no suitor was good enough for them led to their suffering and ultimate humility. Choices have consequences. The story highlights that our actions, especially those driven by selfishness and rivalry, can have unforeseen repercussions. Value inner qualities over appearance. Ezen and Nena's eventual suitors represent kindness, patience, and wisdom, qualities they initially overlooked due to superficial judgment. The importance of friendship and unity. Their rivalry destroyed not only their friendship but also sowed discord among their families, showing the destructive power of envy and competition. Heed warnings and wisdom. The village elders' initial doubts about Ugochukwu serve as a reminder to respect the advice of those with more experience and wisdom. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to our channel, Omastruestories, comment, like and share. See you in our next drop. Love you all.